Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and hello to our most respectful lecturer, REEZA. I hope you are faring well in this tiring time and is praying for you to be in the good health. I'm wishing you a very good day, sir. My name is FATIN binti MAHAMED. I'm from BA2463P class and I'm going to be a presenter as for today. As for the presentations, I have decided to present on the Chapter 9, Global Human Resource Management under the subtopic Cultural Assimilator. So as we all aware, cultural assimilation is the process by which a person or a group's language or culture come to resemble those of another group. So without further ado, let's start. The cultural assimilator has become one of the most effective approaches to cross-cultural training. Before I dive into our subtopic in cultural assimilators, let me first explain what is the cultural assimilator. A cultural assimilator is a program learning technique that is designed to expose members of one culture to some of the basic concepts, attitudes, role perceptions, customs, and values of another culture. These assimilators are developed for each pair of cultures. For example, if an MNC is going to send 3 US managers from Chicago to Caracas, a cultural assimilator will be developed to familiarize the 3 Americans with Venezuelan customs and cultures. If 3 Venezuelan managers from Caracas were to be transferred to Singapore, another assimilator will be developed to familiarize the managers with Singapore customs and cultures.
In times past, immigration policy was selected based on how compatible the groups were thought to be. For instance, a white English-speaking Christian nation would favour immigrants from other white English-speaking Christian nations. Some nations had immigration policies specifically designed to exclude on the basis of race, as a way of maintaining social cohesion through racial homogeneity. But after these race-based immigration policies were dismantled, many Western nations saw the floodgates open to non-white immigration from the Third World. People became concerned that this would lead to a divided nation of warring tribes, but the government assured its people that through the process of cultural assimilation, over time these new immigrant groups would adopt the language, adopt the culture and way of life, and eventually become indistinguishable from the rest of the population. And many millennials and Gen Xers remember growing up with a few Asian classmates who really were fully assimilated, speaking with a local accent, playing the national sport, and really adopting the nation's culture. But as Third World immigration was further ramped up, it became apparent that some groups were not only failing to assimilate, some had no desire to assimilate and preferred to cut themselves off, creating parallel communities that reflected the nations which they'd left. And most governments responded to this by declaring that it was no longer a goal to assimilate people into our way of life, but instead, through the policy of multiculturalism, immigrants were encouraged to retain their cultures, and the onus was put onto the majority to tolerate, promote, and change their society to be more accommodating to cultures that were in direct contrast to their own. So which policy do you think is the most beneficial? A policy that restricts immigration to only the most compatible groups? A policy that allows for immigration of incompatible groups but insists that they must assimilate? Or a policy that imports incompatible cultures and tells the rest of society that they must tolerate these groups behaving in ways that run counter to the majority culture? It could be said that assimilation is an ideology that claims that white nations can be transformed into non-white nations, but the culture of those white people will continue on through their non-white replacements. But multiculturalism is a policy that turns white nations into non-white nations while attacking and dismantling white culture. But the truth is, whether assimilation or multiculturalism are pursued, the end result is the same. It results in a divided society of incompatible groups all fighting for their own interests. Assimilation can only succeed under very low levels of immigration, and in practice, this has usually meant low levels of Asian immigration. Assimilation is essentially inviting Mexicans, then asking that they stop acting so Mexican and act more white. Inviting Somalians and asking that they stop acting African and act more white. Or inviting the Islamic world and asking that they not be so Islamic. One nation that still clings to the ideal of assimilation is the United States, where it's often said that although Americans come from many lands on Earth, once you gain citizenship, you become a true, proud American. But no matter how often this sentiment is expressed, America remains strongly divided along racial lines. There are an enormous amount of Hispanics who identify strongly with Mexico, even those who weren't born there or have never visited. And many are antipathetic to the prospect of even speaking English any more than is absolutely necessary. They are seen by politicians as a voter group with their own special interests. American media and politicians constantly talk of the black vote and the Hispanic vote because Americans are divided into special interest groups who vote as collectives and identify as distinct peoples. They are a divided country with conflicting interests. This might be a great way for government to gain greater control over a divided nation, but of what benefit has diversity been to America? At what point can they expect that these groups will assimilate and identify solely as Americans and race will no longer be an issue? Well, actually, it's perfectly healthy and normal for Chinese to want to be surrounded by their own culture and their own people. It's perfectly healthy and normal for Muslims to want to marry within their own faith and prefer the association of fellow Muslims. However, multicultural nations are not healthy or normal. They're destined to fall because separate people with separate interests cannot create a unified nation. And why would we want to increase division, crime, and ethnic tensions for 3, 4, maybe 5 generations simply to lower the cost of labour with little or no benefit to the commoner, just so that the great-grandchildren of immigrants might be able to assimilate with your great-grandchildren? Why enforce a social experiment that has no guarantee to work and has been proven to be an utter failure in numerous countries? Why impose this on the people without their consent, using their tax dollars to create numerous government programs which ethnically replace them? First, we were told that we need to be more patient and eventually immigrants would assimilate. Now we're told that they will not assimilate and the responsibility is on us to tolerate numerous cultures existing within our nation, many who are even hostile or hold contempt for us and our nation. We watched the policy of assimilation fail, then we saw it replaced with a policy of multiculturalism, then we watched multiculturalism fail. And now conservative thinkers are calling for a return to the failed policy of assimilation. But going back is not an option. The demographic change is too far underway, and migrants have no incentive to assimilate when they already have ethnic enclaves that they can join, separate schools, separate grocers, separate places of worship, separate neighbourhoods, and satellite TV to broadcast shows from their homeland. And so the solution is to return to a common sense policy of only allowing immigration from nations whose people are most similar to our own. And the most compatible immigrant group for white European nations is the white European people.
In the majority of cases, these assimilators enable the trainee to read and understand a short episode of a cultural event. If the trainee has the right decisions, he or she will progress to the next episode. In case the answer is wrong, the trainee should read the episode again and pick another answer. Where to start? Let's begin with the choice of content of the assimilators. The choice of what is sufficiently important to include is a major problem for the building of successful cultural assimilator. Some assimilators have described critical incidents that are significant. A case must satisfy at least one of the following requirements, if it is to be listed as a critical incident, which is divided by 4. First, an expatriate and a host national interact in the situation. Second, the situation is puzzling or likely to be misinterpreted by the expatriate. Thirdly, the situation can be interpreted accurately if sufficient knowledge about the culture is available. Fourth, the situation is relevant to the expatriate's task or mission's requirements. These incidents usually occur by asking expatriates and host nationals to identify certain intercultural activities or events, which greatly influence their attitudes or conduct towards members of the other's culture. These events can be good, unpleasant, or simply nonsensical. Secondly, validation of the assimilator. Validity refers to the level of the efficiency and the outcomes expected. This means a method, the cultural assimilator, in this case, tests what is to be calculated. The method is validated after the crucial incidents of the cultural assimilator have been generated and the alternative answers returned. The crux of its efficiency is to ensure that the assimilator is valid. One way to assess an assimilator is to take the target culture sample and to ask them to rate the written scenarios and choose the best solutions. If a significant majority of the party agrees to the options of one alternative, the situation in the assimilator is used. However, if more than one of the four options is strongly endorsed, either the scenario or the alternative is updated until a general consensus or the scenario has been discontinued. Thirdly, the cost-benefit analysis of assimilators. The training assimilators method can be very costly. A standard program of 75 to 100 incidents also takes about 800 hours to create. Assuming that a trainer costs $50 per hour, including benefits, the cost per assimilator is approximately $40,000. This may be the expense disseminated through several trainees and may not be appropriate to adjust the curriculum each year. An MNC that sends 40 people annually to a foreign country for which an assimilator has been installed pays only $200 per person for this scheduled training. The costs are also more than justified in the long term. Furthermore, the definition is appropriate for almost all cultures. Many assimilators, including Arab, Thai, Honduran, and Greek, have been installed, to name but four. Above all, research has shown that these assimilators increase the productivity and happiness of individuals trained relative to other methods of training. The leader's optimistic internal qualities and other factors contribute to coherent positive behavior. The study and applications of positively oriented human resource and strengths and psychological capacities that can be measured, developed, and effectively managed for performance improvement in today's workplace, based on Luder's study into effective organizational conduct (POB). Moving on with positivity on the job was correlated with happiness of the employee. However, there are many layers of the optimistic climate. To be the most productive and innovative, Ludens and Yusuf postulated that they must have positive characteristics, states, structures to encourage positivity behavior. How does POB impact teaching on cultural assimilations? A positive state is domain-specific, which can affect reactions and behavior. Environmental dependency, which is first, provide a video that tells staff in different countries about the disparity between job ethics and communication style. Research shows that the auto efficiency, hope, optimism, resilience, and emotional capital are other states. The collection, growth, and management of human resources are also the priority of positive organizations. Second one, engage the workforce with the inclusive team involved in several different groups of people. This constructive approach aims to put employee skills and abilities into line with corporate priorities and goals. Third, they are inspired to give back to the institution when workers are well handled by provide a dynamic culture of team building. Thus, the resultant actions of organizational citizenships (OCB) will be positive. If these human attributes, internal and external states, and institutions are all based on the positive, in addition, altruism inadvertently the focus is on sensitivity and courtesy. The definition above, as with most examples, is cultural. In other words, in one region, what appears to be favorable internal or exterior influence may not be the same. However, an organization needs human resource regardless of location, and MNCs should make it possible to concentrate on the strength of human capital to support organization's success. Back then, various of lessons learned that we can conclude. Firstly, comprehension and acceptance make it work in harmony in order to reduce the contact distance between different cultures. Even if organizational practice can be different from one organization to another one, there is a dominant organizational discourse based on the performance and profit. This culture influences the social discourse that has an impact on national politics. As a result, this also affects individual traits. Secondly, in the area of workplace, diverse culture professionals or staff have to open their minds by prevent staff who have been unable to work. This discourse shapes individuals' way of thinking, which as such controls individual behaviors. Indeed, employees align to the organizational value which foster performance to achieve profit, but also growth and competitions. Thirdly, indeed, research proves this cultural training can increase perceptions and demonstrate successful behavioral abilities to enhance understanding in the workplace. Nevertheless, it has been found that a cognitive dissonance might exist between what individuals believe is good and how they behave. This happens through performance management, like actors on stage. Employees perform and act while at work and remove their costumes and put on their own clothes to go back home. As the last word and a token of appreciation, I would like to thank you, sir, for your hard work and all the knowledge you've been given to us. May Allah bless you and may you always in the good conditions. Thank you for lending me your time for a moment, sir. Stay safe and don't forget to wear your mask, sir. #KitaJadiKita. Assalamualaikum.